Welcome everybody to another episode of the Art Business Podcast. My name's David Bellingham. I'm Programme Director of the Master's Degree in Art Business at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London. We're about to go to the Venice Biennale in about a week's time. It'll be our last study trip together of the academic year. After that, students begin their dissertations. So it's quite apt that my guest today is an alumnus of the program. His name is Andrei Petru, if I may, Jecza, and Andrei studied at the Institute on the Masters in Art Business in 2012 to 13. Welcome, Andrei.
Thank you very much, David, for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, it's going to be so interesting. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this recording before we take the students to Venice in a week's time, and I know, unfortunately, it's now closed, I think, the exhibition, but I was in Venice for the Biennale a few weeks back, and I visited an exhibition by one of your artists, which we'll talk about later on, and it was absolutely amazing. And I think what, it's amazing because one of the things I love about Venice is seeing the contemporary art within these heritage settings. The Venice is quite famous for that during the Biennale. Anyway, we'll come to all that later, Andrei, and I'm just going to start with the usual desert island disc question, as we call it. Do you have a favorite city? I know that you're based in your hometown of Timisoara. Hope I pronounced that correctly, in Romania. And we might talk about that later, but maybe that's not your favorite city. Maybe you could talk about that.
I mean, you can't deny your hometown is always your favorite city in one way or the other. It's always amazing to return home, especially as we have here our main gallery, a foundation, a sculpture park. I'm related to this place like my hometown. But my favorite city most recently, beside London, which was, of course, my big love for 2 years while studying in Sotheby's, is Bucharest more recently, because Bucharest has a very vibrant and very vivid art scene, which is growing. We are also planning to open a second gallery now in Bucharest in the fall. So it's a blooming market. We were talking 10 years ago while working on my dissertation on how the Romanian artists are performing incredibly well on the international markets. But more interesting is to see how the Romanian art market is now doing better than the global one. We are in a sort of a recession at the moment, and we just made we as an association of gallerists that founded an art fair now in Bucharest, which just happened last week. We made sales north of €500,000, euros, which is completely unexpected for such a young market as Romania. So, yeah.
That's absolutely incredible, and I know we have so I think since you were at the institute, the students set up a magazine called Made in Bed, as in Made in Bedford Square, a great name, and that has just gone from strength to strength. I don't know whether you've seen their Instagram page. They have a lot of followers now, and they specialize, or with the students every year, they specialize in. I don't think it was intended; it just happened this way in emerging artists and interviewing emerging artists. So, I don't know whether if it may be that I can put some of your more emerging artists, if you like, in touch with them so that they can interview them for the magazine.
I think it's amazing. Every such initiative is cool. I mean, for me, when I was studying in London, for me it was of foremost importance to meet as many people as possible. So now having seen the new generation of students kind of expanding the concept and doing other things now, especially with social media, is more present. It's cool. So yeah, I would love to get in touch with them, of course. They have to like the artist, though.
That's all. Yeah, that almost occasionally I'm asked if I could do an introduction, like to a new art show in one of the galleries in London, and I always say I want to come down and look at the art first. I'm not going to do it unless something in the art inspires me.
Yes, we'll
Um,
see.
there you go. I think that's very important. Yeah, so Bucharest, I'm ashamed to say I'm very inexperienced traveler in terms of Eastern Europe. And I've never been to Romania. I'd love to go to Bucharest. It comes up in conversation with friends quite a lot, and they say, "Oh, you must go there. It's
It's amazing.
fantastic."
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a place to go and place to be. It's kind of a growing market in every
Yeah.
aspect possible. And yeah, I mean, of course, we are in the West. Timisoara is in the West. So my biggest love would be Vienna. If I would have to move to a city, probably I would move to Vienna because it's so amazing. And I also speak German. But if I would have to choose now for business, it's definitely Bucharest, especially as we are doing a gallery there. So yeah.
And of course, your own town, Timisoara in Western Romania, is, I believe it's described as Little Vienna. Now you've
Yes,
mentioned
here we go. You move from Little Vienna to Big Vienna in one time, in one lifetimes. Yeah, I mean it used to be a capital of culture last year, European capital of culture last year.
Yes, fantastic.
So it had a growing art scene, of course. Unfortunately, not so many galleries, more public institutions. Biggest Romanian art collector is based in Timisoara, so Art Encounters Foundation, which he founded.
Sure. And I think a couple of years ago, after lockdown, there was a big exhibition of Brancusi.
That was last year. Yes, this was
Last year. Yeah.
It was the
Yeah.
biggest, most visited exhibition in Romania so far after the 90s. So it was quite a success. Yeah, and we have also Vienna here. So it's an interesting city, and I would never give up on Timisoara for sure. But as you were asking, what's hot and what's cool, for sure, Bucharest is a hotspot to see and to go and visit. So.
Yeah, and I'd like to, a little bit later into the conversation, I'd like to ask you to expand a little bit about the art fair. But the next question is like a binary opposite. Do you have a place in the countryside or maybe by the coast which you really love to escape to, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, beside this like crazy 4 weeks that we just finished on Sunday, we still have some logistical things to solve and some shippings to do. But beside this, we will go. I mean, we have amazing countryside in Romania too. Obviously, there is the Transylvania area, which is amazing, very beautiful to relax. Many of my collectors moved from the big cities to the countryside to stay there and relax. For me personally, my next destination is by the sea, so I will go to the southwest of France, not the south, the typical south, but to Biarritz, and enjoy just looking at the sea for no more people for at least 1 week.
Sounds wonderful.
Thousands and thousands of people over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think you deserve it after what you've been doing over the last.
After Venice, of course. I mean, after the start of Venice, the first week of Venice is insane. It's like 3 art fairs in one.
Absolutely.
And then also this art fair in Bucharest and the other exhibitions we did. So yeah, I'm fine for now. I'm a social person, but I have also my limits.
And so, yeah. And what about architecture? Can you think, if you had to name a building that you really love, it can be Baroque, it can be antique, it could be modernist or secessionist, which I think your city is quite famous for secessionist architecture. I mean, is there a building that springs to mind that you love?
In my city or generally?
Well, anywhere. Yeah, anywhere in the world.
Well, I will get married in September in a beautiful church which was made in the 70s. Very concrete, a lot of concrete and very brutalist building. So this is for me something that I like very much. Of course, if you go to Venice, I mean, that's the city of architecture, from Scarpa, which is very contemporary, or Tadao Ando in the more newer buildings that I'm guessing you will visit with the MAP students this year. I mean, Ponta Dogana and Palazzo Grassi and everything, to the most amazing churches that one can imagine. So we were set with our little project that we had, which you visited, in this beautiful little chapel. No one exists. There is. I mean, you open a door in Venice, and there you go. It's a Renaissance masterpiece. A Tintoretto, Palma di Giovane, Titian. So it's insane. I mean, Venice. I would select my favorite building as Venice.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. and yeah, Venice, of course, like your own city, and Bucharest is famous for Baroque architecture, as well as, of course, Palladio's more clean lined classical inspired churches as well.
It's such a beautiful city. I mean, I really envy the class that is now going to Venice, because it's also warmer than it was when I was there in April.
Well, it's been raining it was probably raining when you were there. It was raining when I was there, very unusually. The hotel had to switch back to winter air conditioning because it had switched to summer and we were freezing. But it was raining, and it's still raining. It's been raining for weeks. It's very unusual. Global warming, maybe, who knows?
Yeah, well, the rain is not bad either in Venice. It's beautiful.
It doesn't bother me at all, but not yet a time to go to the Lido and hire a cabana for the day. But just coming back to this brutalist, is it a church building, but in brutalist?
It's the brutalist church built 1971 by.
Wow.
It's one of the very first and single projects made during communist for a church.
How interesting.
Catholic church in these terms. It was made by 3 artists, one of being my father, another being a painter, and an architect, who made one building together, 1971. It's by the Danube. It's not so close to us, but it's like 150 kilometers from us.
Oh, I see. So it's not in your hometown. It's in another town.
It's in somewhere else, somewhere nowhere ever goes. But it's such beautiful, and I will send you some pictures so you.
No, please do, and we can put a link for the podcast information if anyone wants to look at it. It sounds amazing to have like a communist era Catholic.
Sort of the modernists selected by many history of architecture in East Europe. It's one of the icons, so it's beautiful, but no one knows about it, so it's amazing.
Pardon my ignorance again. I'm not a modernist.
A hidden gem of Eastern Europe.
But I'm very, I still like to, there's quite a lot of interesting brutalist architecture in London. For example, Dennis Lasdon's National Theatre, which I love, and
I also like the Barbican, the whole thing.
The Barbican's incredible, yeah. I mean, a lot of people hate these things, and I agree with you that there's a certain kind of stark beauty to the book. How lovely to get married in a church that your father was involved in building. And is your father still alive, may I ask?
Yeah, no, he's 15 years dead already. So he was not alive when I was in London already. But it's for me it's beautiful. It's like it's already now it's time to be a historical building because it's more than 60 years old. So
sounds great. I love that. And what about music, Andrei? Is there a particular if so the Desert Island Discs is a BBC program in the UK you may have heard of. It's good fun. They've had quite a lot of if you search it, you can listen back to earlier episodes, and they've had episodes with people like Tracy Emin, and it's great. They have a choice of their favorite music which tells people about their life, but they always have to choose one that they have to take to their desert island. And so what might that be, or it might be perhaps a musician or composer.
That's difficult.
Very difficult.
one single one, that's difficult. For sure, I would. If it should be an album though, because it's the
that's
one.
Okay.
I don't know. It could be Miles Davis.
Oh wow!
Just to relax. If I'm a singer on the deserted island, I need some quietness and relaxation.
Yeah, so kind of blue, perhaps.
Blue, yeah. Well, the King of Blue is the most famous now, but you have.
Yeah.
Miles was a genius in music. And you work for jazz. So,
I totally agree with you. I think that would be very, very close. That would certainly be in my top 10. I think something by Miles Davis. Yeah.
But then on the other hand, I love electronic music, and
do you mean
not
like
bass, but like electronic?
Do you mean like art music, what we might call classical music, serious music in inverted commas, or do you mean things like trance?
Both. So both are.
You think electronic?
I grew up with friends who were composers of symphonic music. So I grew up with going each Friday to the Philharmonia or to the opera. So that was my understanding. And then I discovered jazz, and then I discovered electronic music in terms of trance and house and minimal and all these things. So yeah, I mean, my partner is always joking because I love these very extreme two sides, you know, from the very traditional, like say, classical music, or even the gypsy music, which is a free music made by themselves with normal instrument. I mean, with they self-taught people, so they do like genuine out ethnic music, if you like. But then
Yes.
I go to trance festivals, so it's fun. It's a bit of both, so that's why Miles Davis is the safe bet for the deserted island.
You have to. So, you know, if you were doing Desert Island Discs for the BBC, you're allowed something like 8 different records, which enables you also to talk about significant moments in your life. So it's often, I think, a piece of music you may not listen to anymore, but it has memory, it evokes memories as music really does. So, and another thing I think that evokes memories in one's life is art. So I don't know if I could ask you a similar question about art. And I obviously you're a gallerist and you're into you know, contemporary art and modernism, but you know, if you have is there a particular work of art that you might take to your desert island?
You know, I took a whole city for architecture. Now I will take a whole museum. I'm joking.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. One single piece, it's very complicated. I mean, yeah. I mean, probably I would, just because I'm very selfish, I would take one of my father's works, probably. But who was a sculptor, born 1939, so he has very classical, modern approach. One of the, I mean, here we have one of his sculptures actually. But then if I would have to choose from general art history, like a dream come true piece, I'm not sure. Maybe I would take a nice nude of Picasso.
A 1930s.
Yes, 1930, a good one. North of 100 million in Sotheby's. Joke. It's good for trading as well. You never know who we meet.
And you said you mentioned that your partner is an artist.
No, my partner is an architect,
An
and
architect.
she is she's running her own gallery for design, and she most recently curated and directed the sort of additional add-on to the contemporary art fair that we did this year. They had also an extension on design, so that's what she did.
What's in Bucharest?
It was in Bucharest, yes. It's close.
Oh wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. So you have basically an arts fair, and then you also had a smaller design fair at the same time.
Yeah, well, it was a more of a design exhibition where she invited galleries and artists at the same time to participate.
Yes.
But the ambition is, of course, to make it like a sort of a pad, you know, which is mixes contemporary art with contemporary design or mid-century design. So a little now it was only contemporary design, but the idea probably for the next editions in the future is to have like a proper design fair.
That's amazing. So maybe in a year, if I might mark this in my calendar, maybe in a year's time we could have both of you now married.
Yeah, it would be amazing, of course. But we had also some alumni, some Sotheby's alumni coming this year. I invited some of my colleagues or my younger colleagues who actually came to see the fair. So
really? What from your year?
Not really. I think it was one girl from who finished in New York.
Okay.
Who is a Sotheby's alumni, a MAB alumni. And
right. So do you kind of advertise that on the alumni network?
Not really.
You just know these people.
I know them, yeah. And it's always nice to connect while knowing that one is a Sotheby's alumni. It makes things easier.
And these people weren't necessarily Eastern European. They were.
This girl is actually, but lived in New York, and we had like more friends in common, so she came to see us as well. But also during the fairs, I mean, also in Venice, many of my former colleagues in London came to see the show. I mean, from you may remember, I don't know, Andrea Botero or others from.
Oh yes.
Who are traveling all over the world, so they come and see the show, which is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, that year had well, every year has some significant students, you know, who are now and ones that I remember more, not necessarily because it's just that I can't get to know everybody very well because we have quite a lot of students, as you know. We, I think it was, you know, this year we got 80. I don't know how many it was in your year, but it's usually around about 80.
We were a lot.
Yeah. But there's a couple of students that, well, one I'm thinking of, Jessica Ted, went on. She was very, very hot on the early blockchain. In the early blockchain world, you might remember her. I don't know what she's doing now. I think I think she sort of probably, hopefully for her, she made a lot of money and is sort of slightly out of the picture now. Apologies, Jessica, if I'm wrong. Actually, I might try and contact her and maybe do a podcast with her. But she was going all around the world, like lecturing in the avant-garde of blockchain and art developments, you know, at that point.
Amazing, yeah, it's incredible.
And then here are you, sort of like, you know, spearheading the
yeah, I was one of the first
it
was fun because I thought I'm the first Romanian, and in the same year with me there was another girl who from Bucharest who now lives in London, who did the contemporary section, who was at the same time we were the first two Romanians doing the program as a master.
Can you remember her name? So she was doing contemporary art.
It's Andrea Belba, I think her name.
Andrea Belba. No, I didn't know Andrea, don't think.
She was in contemporary. She has an art advisory now and lives in London.
Okay. Interesting. So as we're talking about the Institute, maybe we could go back earlier into your life, Andrei. And I don't know, you know, you're working in the art world now, as am I. How did that happen? Do you have any early memories of art, or was it that were you born into a? Oh, you've already said that your dad was an architect. Is that how you just got naturally interested in the art world?
No, I mean, growing with in my father being a sculptor, and then my mom becoming in a way his manager without knowing how to be a manager. So she was like 15 years younger, and all this young spirit and energies. I grew up in this environment. There was no other option for me. You know, I mean, in my perspective, I know very truly. I can remember when I was in my 8th grade, in 8th grade, and it's like first year of college. No, I mean, ninth is the first year of college. I remember I looked up where I want to study, and I discovered Sotheby's Institute. No advertising, no false advertising. No, literally, I knew that when I started my college years that I want to study in Sotheby's because I knew that I want to become a gallerist. Well, I became a gallerist before coming to study in London, but having this experience, I mean, my father, who was a very well recognized artist in Romania in the 70s and 80s, was exhibited in Venice Biennale, was exhibited in Sao Paulo, had international galleries that represented him, like Swiss galleries and German galleries from West, actually, which was unusual for artist living in communist Romania.
Yes.
And then when the 90s come, my father decided that whatever he had the chance to obtain from his galleries in this time, like catalogs, exhibitions, biennales, and so on, he would love to give back to his peers. So he started the foundation together with my mother, which was one of the very first foundations for contemporary art in Romania.
Is that named the Jecza?
No, it was named Triade. It had a more general name, like three arts, you know, music, literature, and arts, fine arts. And it was one of the very first in Romania and still lives in existence. And then when they did this non-for-profit, my idea was, I mean, I inherited I'm joking now, but my mom is Jewish, so I inherited my Jewish nature from my mother and wanted to become a dealer and make some profitable, not for profit share, but for profit share organization. And that was the spring of the idea when to start the gallery, and I started the gallery when I was 21. So yeah, it was quite early on.
It's amazing, and I know I think your year was one of the first years where we introduced this collection project, where you might remember we randomly generate 4 different budget levels, and each student has to create an exhibition for a fictional patron, and they have to also rationalize the way they're going to exhibit it. They have to write a catalogue, They have to rationalize the budget. And I think you had the highest budget, the 15 million. And it's every year when people get their budgets, the people with the 15 million say, haha, I've got all the money. And then they often find it really, really difficult to spend that 15 million because you have to buy works of art on the real market from the previous year. Can you remind me what your theme? Can you remember what
I know what my theme was abstract art, like abstract art, and it was almost structured like an art fund at the time. So
yes,
we had also the exit plan, not only the museum part, but the private museum sector. Then you could also sell the collection for at the end. So yeah, it was abstract art with Gerhard Richter, and I found myself hard to find a Gerhard Richter in the budget and not have only one work for the whole budget.
It's incredible. It's very difficult, as you know, and that often people with the lowest budget, which is £15,000, spending an average of £1,000 on each work of art. They often find it easier because they can just get like multiple editions and quite interesting.
I still would love to have such a. I don't have that many collectors who have that budget yet, but we're working on it.
Absolutely. And then I think you can you remember which study trips we did that year where we went to?
We did Maastricht.
We went to Maastricht, which we do every year.
TEFAF Maastricht.
And
then what else? We did Amsterdam.
We didn't go to Venice, I think.
No, we didn't Venice. It was not Venice. It was it was Amsterdam, TEFAF, Maastricht, the whole thing. So
yes, that's right. Yeah.
And then
I can't remember what we might have gone to Torino.
Torino, I can't remember. There was another trip. There are always two trips now, I imagine.
Well, we sometimes three. At the moment, we tend to do three. One in the UK. We go to Scotland and St Ives, split the students in half.
We did Chatsworth or something like that.
Yes, I remember. Yeah, Chatsworth, and that was the year. Unfortunately, because I groaned when I saw what the theme was. It was a single artist year, Chatsworth. So, just for the benefits of the listeners, Sotheby's modern and contemporary departments used to have this amazing selling exhibition. I think they called it. It wasn't an auction, but in the grounds of the Baroque home of the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, Chatsworth. It's got these amazing Baroque gardens, an incredible art collection, the interior in this Baroque English house. And I think it lasted 10 years. We took the students every year, so we didn't miss a year. But the year that we took you, it was just, do you remember? It was Flanagan. Barry Flanagan, who makes the hares, the bronze hares.
The rabbits, yeah, I know.
The rabbits. So the whole, and I didn't really quite know how to introduce that to the students. But I think in the end they had quite a lot of fun looking at the rabbits.
It was fun. I mean, I visited afterwards the other show that they did until it was on when they did other things, and it was very interesting to see how they incorporate this kind of new language into the old building, which then I saw also the British Museum was doing, exhibiting Damien Hirst within the Egyptian part and every other things like this. So there were a few other experiments like this.
That was the Statue of Philia exhibition, ancient Greek for lovers statues, of course, it was a very early intervention of contemporary art into a heritage building. We're going to come back to that, of course, when we talk about Venice this year.
Project,
but that was very early, and it was like the YBA's Young British Artists.
Exactly, it was YBA, exactly.
Yeah, and people like Mark Quinn did a Kate Moss Sphinx right outside the entrance to the Parthenon galleries.
A beautiful piece, I remember, and Mark Quinn as well.
Mark Quinn, by the way, currently, if you're in London, he's just opened an exhibition, literally 10 minutes walk from me in Kew Gardens, and I haven't been to it yet, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to come more often to London, but mostly I don't have the time, but. I mean, I love it. London is my favorite city by far. I can't remember the third trip, but I do remember Amsterdam. That was really fun. We went to Paris. Here we go.
Yes, I was wondering. I thought we might have been in Paris. Yeah, we haven't been there for quite a while. The reason being that FIAC, the Contemporary Art Fair, Well, we were beginning to have problems with getting students Schengen visas in time for FIAC. So
Okay.
there were a lot of students who just weren't getting their visas in time. So we just decided to stop that because we're art business, we like to focus on somewhere where there's an art fair, or at least the Biennale, which is, as you know, related to a certain extent to the market. So that's why we kind of stopped going, but we're thinking possibly of going there again this year. Because Paris is now meant to be trying to compete since Brexit with London as an art centre.
Oh yeah, it's strong. I mean, we were almost shortlisted this year for Paris Plus. I mean, the jury wanted us to be there, but because of Paris, which was quite a leap for us. I mean, on a financial level, because it was quite an expensive exhibition to produce, even if
I'm sure
it was quite.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, all of our students have to do, the master's students have to spend the summer, and they're about to start spending the summer when they get back from Venice, researching and writing a dissertation. I believe Anders Pettersson, this financial whiz kid in the art world, runner of Art Tactic, he supervised your dissertation. Can you talk a little bit about what you did?
Well, I had a few options at the time, and I chose to do the one which is most closest to me and which interested me a lot, and which I still use as a reference in many contexts, and really helped me. I mean, it's important when you choose a dissertation to choose something that you think might help you, not that it's fun to do for the moment, because it's quite a serious undertaking to focus that much work on a topic, but to have something that you think is a tool for you for moving on. So for me, it was understanding the way the Romanian artist succeeded on the international markets. So I focused on Adrian Ghenie, of course, Marius Bercea, Victor Mann, Șerban Savu, who's now in the Venice Biennale in the main pavilion, and so forth. So for me, that part of how you get from zero to hero into a market that is so competitive like the international one, how does one succeed? And having this done helped me also understand how we can do it with other artists, or also make case examples of the ones that we are already representing and they do pretty well, as this artist is that you saw in Venice, which is very young and which we discovered 3 years ago.
That's correct my pronunciation. Tincuta Marin.
Yes.
Tincuta Marin. Yeah. And we'll come to her. I promise we'll come to her in a moment. I just wanted to say a little bit of, and it's interesting that you were interesting. So you're quite interested in how you can as a gallerist, you working with emerging artists. Anders had published this wonderful diagram that you would have seen in a slide in his lectures about the career trajectory of artists, how they actually start, just very locally, maybe in group shows, then they have solo shows, then they have a national presence, or they have a local presence maybe in the city, and then they have a national presence, maybe moving to Bucharest or whatever, and then suddenly they have a European presence, and then eventually there are collectors in exhibitions in New York, Hong Kong, or wherever. And Anders is very well known for that wonderful career trajectory schema.
Yeah, I mean, he was great because he was a tutor that at once was quite experimental in this sort of the way he was seeing art, because he has this sort of very analytical perspective. On the other hand, I was a terrible student, I have to acknowledge, and I didn't do anything. I mean, I discovered in the meantime that I have ADHD, so I discovered that actually only under super pressure I can deliver. So I had to wait until the very last moment until I wrote the work. So I'm thankful for him again that he was patient enough with me to do it. But it was good to have him because having this sort of very analytical view on something which is in a way quantifiable, also in an analytical way, not only, of course, because there is a lot of other things that go into it, with chance, luck, talent, and so on, which are not quantifiable in a diagram, was a very good decision for me. And yeah, I'm still doing. We do a collaboration with Ernst & Young. We do EY here in Romania. They are our partners, and we do different lectures on how to start collecting, how tax works into art collecting, and so on. And I still use extracts of that 10 years.
Wow! So you're involved in educating fellow gallerists with
Yes,
EY.
mostly collectors, not galleries.
Yeah.
Because there is a big appetite. You know, you have a new market. I mean, it's a lot of wealth in Romania in the past few years. And people start with the normal things like cars and watches and houses and jewelry, and then eventually they start to collect art, and then they want to know why is that more interesting than everything else they did before. So it's good to inform.
And not for you because you grew up in that environment, but for someone like me who had very unartistic family, you know, it took me quite a while to understand what is good. I hate using these words, but you know, it took me quite a while to understand what was good contemporary art and what is basically, without being offensive, like wallpaper or decorative. You know, where is the threshold when suddenly it becomes something that a museum might be interested in? Basically, it took me I think it takes a lot of our students a long time to get that. And the only way you can do it is through experience and not listening to other people and getting snobby about it, but just through visiting and realizing and thinking, you know, and you know, it's very difficult.
Think that visiting is the key here. I really think. I mean, we are in that age and travel. I mean, someone who, I mean, I'm not. I don't want it to be patronizing here, but someone who can afford to study in London can afford to see the world and have that first person experience. Because with art, you need this first time experience. I mean, I learned in the Sotheby that you can't judge an auction by numbers. You have to be in the room. The same thing applies to contemporary art. I mean, you have to see the shows. That's it. And if you see the shows, and you start slowly to develop your own taste, I guess. So, and also to see what's good and what's not. And that's the way you do it. And Venice is amazing, because you know, this year especially, there was the curator didn't really choose the well-known gallery represented artists, so all galleries had to do their best and show their artists in Venice. So you have an amazing number of great exhibitions in the city at this moment in Venice.
Yeah, and we'll come to, again. I just wanted
we go there.
I think one, because I want to talk quite a lot about Venice for the rest of the end of till the end of the podcast, simply because I'm hoping that my students might have their earplugs in on the plane and listen to this as a kind of introduction to Venice in general, as well as to your. I know, and this is the sad thing for them; they won't see your.
They can see it on Instagram.
We will talk about it because it's kind of almost like a paradigm for a lot of other interesting installations in Venice. But I just wanted you to remind us when you opened your eponymous gallery, the Andrei Jecza Gallery in
we started 2011.
So 2011. So it was already open before. It was open several years before you came and studied for the masters.
Yes, but I would say that someone told me in Vienna when I started the gallery that you always need as a gallerist 10 years to know the trade. So I would say at that time I said that's nonsense, that no one needs 10 years to learn something. Now after 13 years, I totally agree with that person who was saying that you really need 10 years to understand how the market works.
I agree, and I'm afraid I've just seen an example of this. I'm not mentioning any names, but I've just seen an example of a gallery that has had to, you know, that ran out of money and has had to fold because I think that the person didn't, you know, they expanded too quickly. That happens a lot, and they didn't quite understand the way this was working and how you have to build in. You've already spoken about this. There's a lot of luck and externalities involved in the art market. Things, sudden recession, sudden lockdowns that affect, you know, your business.
Of course, I mean, and not only that, but also you know the savoir-faire, the beautiful French name of knowing how things are done.
Yes,
it's I think for every job, unless it's something very repetitive, you need a certain buffer of time to understand how different things work and how you can do them. I know it's a bit frustrating. I was young too, and I was saying that's not possible. Maybe not 10 years for the newer generation, maybe 5, but still you get to have some experience. Yeah, we started off in 2011 with a gallery which was at that time focused on sculpture. I realized soon that we can't sustain such a model in Romania because there is not enough art. I mean, even if we are we have our very famous grandfather Brancusi, who was founder father of modernism in the world, so who was Romanian. So, but beyond that, there is not enough. So I switched my focus on this sort of 1960s, 70s avant-garde. I mean, generation of my father, who were very interesting, who pioneered land art or performance or video art, whatever other experimental art forms in the 60s and 70s, and with a kind of strong emphasis given to younger artists. And I would say that since 2018, when I took over completely the business from my mother, who was very helpful in the beginning, but then I decided it's time for me to grow up, so I need my independence. So I bought the company from her, and since 2018, I'm running it on my own, and we grew our team, of course. We decided to focus a lot on new channels of distributions, from social media to Artsy and all the other platforms that one uses now, which were not so practical in Romania. And then, of course, pandemic came, and we did a lot of virtual stuff. So yeah, we expanded quite. I mean, I would say that we have almost a growth of 20 to 25% year on year since 2018, which is quite cool. I mean, more,
absolutely,
maybe even more in the last 2 years.
Yeah. So I just wanted to introduce our discussion about Venice. Maybe it's useful for you to hear as well as the students. My own experience of visiting the Biennale this year. You know, you obviously have to, you do the pavilions in the Giardini and the central pavilion to understand the main themes. First of all, you know, you should all try and read about the curator's background and curatorial preferences and the theme this year. So Pedrosa, who is from the global south, from the southern hemisphere, he's been very involved in the Sao Paulo scene in particular, but he decided to call the fair this year Stranieri Ovunque, and it doesn't translate very well into English because it's quite offensive, actually, foreigners everywhere. So I actually have a tote bag with the Italian on one side and the English on the other. And I always, when I'm walking through London, I always make sure the Italian is on the outside because foreigners everywhere sounds quite offensive. But what is interesting about it, it was almost intended to be when you read more about his strategy. So, you know, he basically says we all feel like foreigners. We all feel we can get quite paranoid. You know, we're living in a world which is very international, particularly in somewhere like London. And somewhere like Venice is an obvious example that you look around and there are people from all over the world whenever you go, including the Biennale. So, you know, he wanted his artists and his galleries and his pavilions, his national pavilions, to riff on that idea really of what it's like to be you know, a foreigner, and then of course, having understood that central theme, and one could say an awful lot more about it. You then go to the Arsenale. Arsenale is a very good example of what Venice is all about. I.e., that is a building you can't normally visit. It's the great historical Renaissance building where all the Venetian warships were made. It's such an incredible building, and the Cordieri, where they used to make the ropes for the ships and the rigging. That is, of course, a very, very famous site locus for the Biennale. So again, you're seeing in the Biennale, you're seeing a mixture of thematic rooms, but also national pavilions. And this year, Pedrosa was very interested in the relationship of father and son, or mother and daughter, the way they pass, as both as artists, the way they pass their art and techniques onto their children. And there are amazing rooms in the Arsenale in particular showing that relationship with the works of the mother and daughter both on display. But there's also a lot of stunning contemporary work, and a lot of another of Pedrosa's strategies, I think, is to introduce us to what we've always in the West thought of as folk art, you know, colorful tapestries, embroidery, not really serious art. And my impression at the end of the week was, you know, this is really good art, actually. And I think in terms of the relationship with the market, we can see some of these artists, I think, are going to get gallerists very interested in them, and they're very unknown, and they're going to be presented. And I think it's going to enrich the art market as well as the cultural world. And just one last thing I wanted to say, Andrei, which takes me to you. And then another strategy when you visit Venice, and we obviously introduce this to our students because we do these mini tours as members of staff with groups of 15 around the rest of Venice. So you're looking at what they call the collateral events, the official collateral events, and you're looking at other events that that are put on, but just because there's all these people interested in art. Pino and the Dogana and the Grassi you've already mentioned, he's a good example of someone who will always put on art, but he's not officially part of the Venice Biennale. But anyway, so what I did is I decided to go up to the Fondamenta Vaporetto stop, facing San Michele, the cemetery island, to the area of Cannaregio, and starting there, going into the great Baroque church of the Jesuits, and then just down the road on the other side of the road was your site, which is typical of the Venice Biennale. It's a Renaissance oratorio dei Crociferi, which is to do with the Crusaders. It's a beautiful little room with amazing paintings still in situ by Palma Giovane, who is an artist that should be known to any students who've studied the history of art, and particularly Venetian art. So you've got this amazing setting. Just before I hand over to you, just to give my experience of this space, you're going through this little door in this very beautiful plain white limestone or marble facade. And you found yourself in this very, very dark, you know, naturally dark space with, and your eyes have to get accustomed to Parma Giovanni's wall, you know, canvases around the walls. It's like a three-dimensional experience, even in Parma Giovanni's time in the 16th century. And he's done these paintings of the Crusades. There's also a ceiling painting by him, if I remember rightly, of the Maria Assunta surrounded by angels. It's really beautiful, and you're looking up into heaven. It's so site-specific, Venice, isn't it? To see these wonderful Tintorettos and Veroneses in situ, and you realise they mean nothing in a gallery, because you lose out that whole experience of being in this room where you're surrounded by this narrative canvases, and then you couldn't miss it, and it's such a shame that it's now been, the installation has gone, but suddenly there's this amazing work in the middle of that quite small space, in the dark, by one of your artists, Tincuta Marin, and she is a sculptor and painter, as I understand it, particularly a bronze sculptor. So there are these four figures at the corners. It reminded me of the Jewish tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, for some reason. There are these Egyptian figures, however, holding up these four canvases, or it looks like a box, but they're actually four oils on canvases, with and all of the iconography reminds one obviously of ancient Egypt, and she called it Where the Sun Sleeps, which is so perfect because it's this dark room, and there's all of these Egyptian figures are holding, as I understand it, sun discs. But she's such a great sculptor, I thought, but also a great painter. So her colors are very bold, her forms are very bold, and it really, really is like a new, reinvented Egyptian art. So that was my response to. And then just before I hand over to you, just in that whole area, you know, within a few minutes, you can visit deconsecrated churches, which now have these most amazing, and you probably visited some of them around that area, amazing exhibitions of contemporary artists and sort of repurposed buildings. Anyway, Andrei, maybe you could tell us a bit more from your viewpoint about, was this your first Venice Biennale exhibition, and how did this come about?
Yeah, so I'm happy that I know that you are, when I was a student in Sotheby, you were a classicist in a way, that you loved Canaletto. And there is a painting of Canaletto, of that street, when you have the Oratorio dei Gesuiti on the Oratorio dei Crocifieri on the left, and on the right you have this amazing Baroque church,
The Jesuiti.
that was reopened, funnily enough, by Queen Mum after fire. So it was put back into action by Queen Mum in the 80s. So it has a very strong link to London, but it was depicted by Canaletto. It's in the same shape as it was not then, besides the vaporettos, which are now modern and added on top of the scenery. But everything else is just the same as it was. So that's the beauty of Venice. You know, you go back in time, and you still live in your days. It kind of has this feeling. So for me, when I was studying in Sotheby's, maybe you remember, I wrote a beautiful letter to you, and at the time I think Ian Robertson as well, to ask you to postpone my last exam because I was in Venice doing my very first project with another alumni from Sotheby's, Adina Grinceanu, who was 1 year older than me. We did at the time a little exhibition of one very important art group from Romania from the 60s called Sigma 1 Group. At that time, Massimo Gioni was the main curator. He exhibited one of the artists in the Giardini exhibition, and we wanted to give the whole group of these 5 artists the chance to show in Venice. So we had 2013 a project in Venice for the very first time. Now, 10 years on, we work with this amazing young painter called Tincuța Marin. I strongly advise or encourage the students to, or I mean our colleagues to check her out on Instagram or check us out on Jecza Gallery to see this project, which unfortunately we had to disinstall after 1 month. We also wanted to focus on the very first month, being the most dense in terms of visibility. The first week is probably the most visited week of the Biennale in general. We had a great response of many people. We had, I mean, the new director of the British Museum, new director of the National Portrait Gallery, and so on, visiting the space, because we did it in collaboration with Matthew Stevenson, who I think is also a Sotheby's alumni from the early 2000s, and who used to be, I mean, chief of sale of Middle East and Russia of Christie's, and then became one of the directors in Pace. And now he's on his own, and he collects as well. And he collected these young artists early on, and decided it was his idea. Let's do something in Venice, because that's the next logical step after we showed her in Miami in the fair or in other fairs in Europe. After we gave her 2 shows, now an exhibition catalog as well. Another bigger catalog is in production right now. She's too young. She's 29 year old, so she's too young to actually get in the National Pavilion or to get in the, let's say, General Pavilion. So we decided to take this in our hands and to produce this exhibition, which we wanted to that has to be, you know, in Venice, you have 1,000 exhibitions at least, to say the least, besides including the pavilions and the Arsenale and everything else. Because Arsenale has the main exhibitions, but it has also the national pavilions, like the Saudi Arabian pavilion and the other many pavilions in the Arsenale itself. So in order to stand out, just to do another exhibition in a beautiful city like Venice, there was no reason. So we wanted something special. So we asked a friend who was a producer of exhibitions in Venice to search for a place that is unusual. And we found 2 actually. Another church, which was is still working, but that was too big for us and for our budget on one side, but also for the artist on the other side. And he found this little chapel made indeed in the 12th century for the first time for the Templars, and then it was repainted by Giacomo Palma e Giovane in the 16th century, and it is only one of 2, let's say, entire rooms painted by one artist. You have Sfolgin San Rocco by Tintoretto and have this one. So it's very exceptional. It's one of the, like, say, Venice jewels in this sort of context. You have this 3D experience. You put it very nicely. you get inside there, and it's small room. It's 6 by 6 meters. So that's only 40 square meters big in total, devoted to this order of the Jesuits, who who are all mostly female, taking care of the ill. It's a little hospital in the back, which is not anymore in action, and it's almost closed in 10 years. So we open it up after 10 years for the public. We installed this beautiful exhibition by Tincuța Marina. I didn't think that we were talking about this, but there is a little work here by her. And she's actually a painter who studied in Cluj in this now renowned School of Painting in Romania. Most recently, in last year, she discovered that there is still something to do more than just painting. And she started to do this sculptures that hold paintings. So it's using sculpture like a frame in a way, like an auxiliary to painting. She still considers herself a painter. And then you have this bigger, we had a few works from her showed also in Miami in this kind of context between sculpture and painting. And this language is very interesting. None other contemporary artist does it at this moment, and she's one of the first. So in this respect, we selected the building, which is amazing, and then she did this work. And I think for a 29-year-old artist, it's quite courageous to take this take this challenge, because you work with a master of Venetian Renaissance, if not one of the masters of, besides Tintoretto, of Venetian Renaissance, and to do an artwork that is not dominant and it's not dominated. So it has a beautiful, it had a beautiful feeling. And of course, it has many sources. She's an artist who works with many sources of inspiration, from modernism, like Picasso, De Chirico, and other artists, until Lenau. Now it's Egyptian art, but it can be also mural Mexican art or other references. So in this respect, it was a beautiful combination. And well, for us, like 3 art fairs in one in terms of costs, but it's definitely worth it. I mean, when you show that much commitment to an artist, it definitely pays back. And we have a lot of new collectors who saw the project and now want more to discover. Of course, that this is one room installation, so it's not so easy to sell, but we had it had that effect, you know. It was not an exhibition, it was experience. So that's very important when you speak about contemporary art.
It was what we might call immersive, but without all the kind of flashing lights and tech, you know. But it was still immersive, I would say.
And you were encouraged to go, because it was so big, you were encouraged to go close and to experience painting in detail, from the drawings to the sketches, from the walls, from the sculptures. I mean, we would also encourage people to gently touch the sculptures, because they are bronze, so nothing happened to them. It's very classical, but in a very contemporary language. Unfortunately, it's not anymore on display, but with pleasure I can send you more information and send you some installation shots for you.
Well, I think listeners and viewers of the podcast, I'll put a link into to your, obviously to your gallery, but also her Instagram pages, where you can actually see quite a lot of pictures, obviously, of her sketches and creating this
also on our own Instagram page, there are a lot of films and videos and
oh right, there you go. So lots of information. Another thing I was going to say is that when you know you it's there for 4 weeks, it's very expensive to put on. In terms of business, obviously you hope that it's an investment, because new collectors are coming in potentially who might then purchase more of her works, and maybe also more works by other artists from your gallery. Do you, when I was there, obviously the reason it's open is because there's this amazing group of understated people who are like interns from the local universities, and they volunteer to kind of be in the room as a kind of guardian of the room when you're in there. And I just wanted to say that, because we're about to go out to Venice, and I would say to my students that if they're going around on their own, don't be afraid to talk to these people, because they I think they are asked by the Biennale Sessions, who runs the educational wing of the Biennale. They're very good at educating them, making sure that they are knowledgeable about the rooms that they're kind of like mentoring or what. Yeah.
Just giving a little advice, if you have to, if you are the very first time in Venice, Cannaregio is a very good place to start because it's still very strongly inhabited by Venetians.
Yes.
And it's probably the best food one can imagine.
Yes, and opposite your oratorio courses, I went there for lunch. Is that amazing? I'm just trying to remember what it's called. Amazing. It's like a student hostel.
Yeah, it's a luxury student hostel. Yes,
that's right, combo. But you're sitting having lunch in this beautiful kind of Renaissance peristyle courtyard with a well in the middle, and I remember it was sunny that day when I was there, and it's very sheltered and lovely. You have to queue for a little bit to get the food, but it's well worth it. It's like a Jecza bar.
Yes, something very important in Venice.
Yeah, and another thing to say to my students or anyone going to Venice for the first time, it's a little bit like tapas. The local Venetian thing is Jecza. You go late afternoon or maybe even earlier, and you have like a glass of bubbly, and you have these you choose, usually because it's Venice, a lot of seafood from the lagoon. And it's called Jecza. It's not great for vegetarians and vegans, but increasingly you find that they are.
Some melanzane, they have some.
Exactly.
And they have these amazing spritzes, like we have Sinar spritz, which is very, very Venetian. It's like Aperol spritz, which is very Milanese. We have Sinar spritz, which is very good. Totally recommended.
Yeah, and I mean it's amazingly still highly fashionable in Venice to have an Aperol spritz. There are other types of spritz, but yeah, it's still very fashionable, and to do that. And I remember also we have quite a relationship with the Guggenheim in Venice. We send one of our students there every year for a scholarship. I remember just down the road from there is that little corner bar. I think it's actually called the Corner Bar in English, and that does really good food and takeaway.
Yeah, very expensive. Very, very close to Guggenheim, there is this, it's called, I think, Il Gondoliere. It's a very old, very nice, you might need a reservation, but it's a very nice restaurant.
Il Gondoliere.
So the gondolier.
Yeah, the gondolier.
It's just around the corner. You just go out around the corner and you get it there.
Oh, right. I must remember, that's more of a restaurant.
Yes, it's a restaurant, but
yeah. It's a great experience. The little corner bar is a very young person's bar, and it's great fun, full of vibes, and it's great.
Speaking of Venice, I mean, this Jean Cocteau exhibition now in the Guggenheim collection is amazing.
Oh yes, the Jean Cocteau. Yeah, I agree. It's funny actually. I was asked by the V&A to do a lecture on. It was a bit of an emergency. Say, David, someone's dropped out. Can you do a lecture on Jean Cocteau? And I thought, I only know Jean Cocteau from his wonderful films, and of course he's interested in classical mythology, the Orpheus trilogy. So I rose to it, and I had to prepare this lecture. And there's even amazing murals in London near Leicester Square. There's a little kind of church there where he did murals quite late in his life, which I was totally unaware of until I started researching it. But as Andrei says, there's this amazing exhibition of Jean Cocteau's art in the Guggenheim. It's really, really interesting.
Which is a destination in his own right. I mean, that Peggy Guggenheim's house there is... That would be one of the buildings that I really love.
That's true. Yeah, unfinished Renaissance Mannerist Palace. Absolutely amazing. Andrei, I'm aware of the time now, but maybe the last question I might ask you, again, this is almost like a Venice Biennale special for particularly my students, but anyone else who's going, to the Biennale this year. Have you got any recommendations, of how to do the Biennale? How would you? Because one of the big problems, as you know, is so much art. I can't remember how many thousands of artworks are actually in the official Biennale and the collateral events, but there's loads of other stuff as well. Was yours a collateral event, or was it official?
It was not really a collateral event. That if you are a collateral event, you have to stay there the whole time until November.
Yes, of course. So it was.
So it was not. I mean, it was an exhibition within, like crazy. An exhibition within the very first weeks,
Yeah.
3-4 weeks.
Yes.
which were many, very good ones as well. To
But
be honest,
if you were visiting Venice like on a honeymoon with your future wife, how would you do? And you're at the Biennale. Any recommendations?
Depends, of course. Very much depends on your budget, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends who visit Venice Biennale they are dealers and one is a collector. They visit each Venice Biennale in the last 20 years. And for each Venice Biennale, for 1 week, they rent a taxi, which is very useful, but crazy expensive. One cannot imagine how expensive that is. 24/7 service in Venice for the opening week is like insane.
Yes.
You better buy work than have that service for yourself and 9 other friends. But I mean, Venice is not so big. For example, my partner was 1 year seasick, so she couldn't take any vaporetto, so we had to walk. So we walked.
Really? Yes, because you do still get that rocking, dizzy feeling when you've been in Venice for a week on the vaporetti.
It happened once. So when that happened, of course, we structured our day knowing what we do on that half, and then on the other half of the city, of course, without going to Giudecca and Murano and all the other islands. But I think it's good. I mean, I think I would do if I'm the first time there, I would go for sure to see Giardini and Arsenale, because this gives you a very good feeling of what Venice Biennale actually is, which is actually a national display of art, of the, let's say, best projects of art in each country in that certain moment or on that certain topic. So that's something that I totally advise on doing. And in a way, also, you get a feeling of the vibe of pulse of the art market or of the art scene, not art market, because Venice has this. They all pretend to be very uncommercial, which is not really true. But everything is founded by galleries. But beyond that, you get a feeling, you get a spirit of the city and of what is actually and why Venice Biennale is so important in the world.
I think that also you need to get the it's quite difficult if you've never been to Venice before, or if you've only been many people when you ask them who've been to Venice said, yeah, but when I was a kid and we did the gondola with my parents, and they're basically in the Centro Storico around San Marco and Rialto. I would suggest that, like to my students, that in the free time they get away as far as possible from there. Even going to one of the other islands, but certainly Cannaregio is a lovely place to walk around. There's lots of, make sure they've got the kind of official map of what's on, and there's amazing. It's all free. Most of it's free. You can just keep going around. But I would prepare in advance on the plane. On the plane on the way out there. I would try and have some kind of map I'd downloaded or printed out and prepare.
Even if you don't have anything printed out, you will see now it's very funny. 10 years ago, you would have people with maps. Now we have people walking around their phones.
Exactly.
It's all dark. You might have a low reception in some points when
that is a problem.
You may get lost, and you have to ask the local. Know a little 2-3 words in Italian, and that also helps. But for me, I would for sure go. And also, I mean, there is this beautiful exhibition in Palazzo Grassi by Mérigneux, by this female artist.
By Metu,
exactly.
Yeah, I think one of my colleagues, Melanie Fasher, who you probably don't know, I don't think she was there then. She's going to take a small group to Grassi and
it's
to
a beautiful exhibition. It's really generally a very beautiful exhibition and shows very much of her practice and evolution.
And also interesting to have a female African artist in the Palazzo Grassi. That wasn't something that we could always be certain of finding when we went to Venice. It says something about the art world today.
Yeah, I mean, have this very white collar world, and now which is kind of it's more democratized in a way, which is very good.
I think that's the great thing about the exhibition, and there's a lot of I think also that if you read Pedrosa's manifesto, if we can call it that, it all sounds highly politicized, and there's a lot. He himself is queer, and there's a lot of that stuff as well, which is great. But I think that sometimes it's quite good just to forget all of that and just my experience this year was how vibrant all of this amazing art that I'd never seen before, and most people had never seen before. You know, Amazon rainforest artists, etc., etc. There's a lot of new stuff, and it's amazing. I think if you open your heart and your eyes to it.
A little bit, this sort of box of what's art and what can be. You have this new vibe of textile art in the past 10 years.
Oh, that's the other thing. In fact, in the hotel, which I stayed at the same hotel that we're going to with the students, I got talking to this old couple, and I said, "Oh, why are you here?" And they were older than me, and I said, "Why are you here for the Biennale?" And they said, "Yeah." Because they weren't the kind of people you think would be at the Biennale, which is incredible prejudice. But the woman said, "Oh, I'm an artist," and I looked her up, and she said, "Oh, I'm here for the textiles," and she's a textile artist. So there's all sorts of people at the Biennale for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's most. I'm really envying. I have been 2 weeks ago to Venice, so I'm quite updated with what happened. I haven't had the time, honestly, and there is no hard feelings about it. I haven't had the time to see all the shows yet.
Yeah.
I've been there for 2 weeks, so students should not put too much on their plate. That's impossible to see everything.
Exactly.
What I did when I was there with friends and collectors and gallerists when the Biennale opened, we did a beautiful WhatsApp group and shared our impressions. And many people shared their impressions of things that others didn't see or didn't have time to see.
That's a good idea. Yeah, and our students, of course, all
get to see more than you.
Yeah, our students, of course, will have their own WhatsApp groups that we're not invited to. But I wish I could see them because I'd see their photographs and everything. Anyway, Andrei, on behalf of the audience, and I'd just like to thank you very much for your insights into the art world in general. And it's very, very interesting that you're coming from Romania and you're talking about the vibrancy. Oh, we didn't talk about maybe we didn't really talk about the Barcelona, the Bucharest, art fair and so on. But you said that it was very, very successful. But anyway, maybe another time we could talk about that. Maybe, as I say, in a few months' time or in a year's time.
Next year edition, we plan a trip to Bucharest.
Maybe we could just get your wife, your then wife, into the podcast as well to talk about design, architecture, and its relationship with the art world. That would be great. So thank you very much, Andrei, for being my guest today.
Thank you very much.